welcome back to the Tea and a Buddy podcast. I'm Dominic.
And I'm Erica.
And today's episode, following with a Halloween-y theme...
Oh my god.
...is about notorious killers of Britain. Because there's been a few.
A very delightful topic.
A very delightful topic. You love it so much.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've picked about 8.
Okay.
There's a lot more.
All?
That's all there is, you know. There's only 8.
Oh my god.
In written, no.
8 notorious ones.
Yep. There's probably more, but...
Are we talking like serial killers? Or mass murderers? Or...
Well, I mean, serial killers.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones that capture the imagination of the public, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, mass murderers are mass murderers, aren't they, you know? Yeah. But then you've got serial killers, and it's all very strange, isn't it? I mean, the first one up... See if you can guess what the first one is without looking at the list.
I've already seen it.
Well, see, can you guess? I bet you can.
The most notorious
killer in Britain.
Yeah, I would have guessed it anyway, even if I hadn't seen it.
Jack the Ripper.
Yes.
And I mean, he was never caught, and there's been so many theories over the years as to who it actually was, and if there was several people, and whatever. But yeah, he was... I mean, if you're not familiar with he's turned into legend now.
Like copycat killers just doing it under his name.
Maybe, yeah. Well, I mean, because back then they had no forensic, they had no DNA or anything like that. So it was very kind of like, you know, that's how legends grew. And if you're not familiar with the story of Jack the Ripper,
What planet do you live on?
He was or it could have been a she, but I think it was probably a he back then. They were a killer that stalked Whitechapel and Spitalfields area of London, which is like the east, but back in 1888, that's when they kind of like... That's when the killing started to be noticed, at least, anyway.
Yeah. I mean, you say it could have been a she, but I think statistics show that very few women have ever been serial killers.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is, but...
yeah.
women just don't have that urge, apparently.
To go killing people.
They kill
people, but that's it. You know?
Women prefer to kill people they know, as opposed to strangers.
I don't like killing strangers, not for me. Not for me today. Jack the Ripper, anyway, he was, the attacks typically involved female prostitutes.
Yeah. Who
lived and worked in the slums of the East End of London, and their throats were cut, and abdominal mutilations.
Ugh.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that photo, I think it was of Mary Jane Kelly.
Oh, yeah.
One of the prostitutes, you know, it was one of the first, like, crime scene photos, like, taken, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And it looks pretty terrible.
It's a real
photo. I mean, you can't really see too much, because, I mean, it's from back then.
Yeah.
But it still looks pretty gruesome and horrific.
Oh, God.
And, you know, the removal of internal organs from at least 3 of their victims led to proposals that their killer had some anatomical or surgical knowledge. Yeah, because people thought it was like either a butcher, or a doctor,
and I think it's
or
because
a surgeon.
The cuts were like sort of precise. They weren't just random and sloppy. They were quite like neat, like someone who knew what they were doing, right?
Yes, I suppose so.
And what the organs were not found. What was thought that they did with them? Do we know?
We don't know, because, with DNA.
Yeah.
You know?
But, they didn't have any suspicions.
They didn't have any suspicions eating them or anything like that. Yeah. We have no idea.
Yeah.
Rumours that the murders were connected intensified in September and October 1888, and numerous letters were received by media outlets in Scotland Yard from individuals purporting to be the murderer.
Yeah.
The name Jack the Ripper originated in a letter written by an individual claiming to be the murderer that was disseminated in the media. This letter is widely believed to have been a hoax and may have been written by journalists in an attempt to heighten interest.
Oh, jeez, yeah.
In the story, and increase their newspaper's circulation. And then there's the From Hell letter received by George Lusk of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee.
Much like...
That came with half of a preserved human kidney.
Oh, God.
Purportedly taken from one of the victims. And I mean, they would have been able... These days, they would, if they had DNA...
Yeah. To know whether it was actually
true, and yeah.
Because it could have just been stolen, I suppose, from, like,
from
a lab
From
somewhere.
a lab somewhere and cut up or whatever, yeah.
That's so crazy that the media's been like that ever since then.
The public, because of all this, the public said, "Oh, it's one guy doing it."
Yeah.
And and he's called Jack the Ripper.
But last week we were talking about, was it last week now? The Brian Laundrie, Gabby Petito thing, and the media's doing the same thing here in 2021,
sensationalizing it all. Yeah.
I mean,
to sell it. Yeah.
Some news outlets, of course, are just reporting the facts, but then others have no problem speculating, and it's just is that really the media's job to speculate on?
Well, I mean, they're not going to
theorize.
They're looking to keep interest on them.
I mean, it's worked.
Oh well, we speculate that Brian Laundrie might be Jack the Ripper.
I mean, you expect that. You expect that kind of stuff from the 1800s, don't you?
It's very kind of the people were like, "Ooh, who's this Ripper? He's tearing up the slums of East London. He's killing all the prostitutes and whatever.
Yeah.
The murders stopped in around 1891.
So they went from when to when now?
1888 to 1891. So people either think,
so just a few
he was
years
caught.
Then.
There's
caught for a different crime.
Caught for a different crime, or he got killed himself, or something happened, because it's very hard. Because people are like, people back then, people were moving through East London. It was transient.
Yeah.
It's like someone was there for 5 minutes and they were under an assumed name. There was a heavy Jewish population. There was, a heavy immigrant population. Mm-hmm. And then they were just moving through there. They weren't living there that long.
Yeah.
So it's very likely that he was a transient.
Yeah.
And he moved somewhere else. He maybe got on a steamship to America.
But he probably wouldn't have stopped killing people.
No, he wouldn't have stopped killing people unless he was
So then there should
himself.
have been similar. Yeah. I mean, if he was moving on, there should have been similar murders elsewhere, wherever that may have been, whether elsewhere in Britain or America or wherever,
Yeah.
You should have heard about them. So I would think that it's more likely that he probably just died, I guess,
Yeah. The police investigation into a series of 11 brutal murders committed in Whitechapel and Spitalfields between 1888 and 1891. It was unable to connect all the killings conclusively to the murders of 1888, which the 5 victims were Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly. They're known as the canonical 5. That was the same guy doing them.
Yeah.
That was Jack the Ripper.
Mm-hmm.
And their murders between 31st of August and 9th of November 1888 are considered most likely to be linked. The police at the time believed the Ripper was a local Whitechapel resident. His apparent ability to disappear immediately after the killings suggests an intimate knowledge of the Whitechapel neighborhood, including its back alleys and hiding places.
What, because they found some of them, instantly? Just after they'd been murdered? So they think,
coppers back then, there was so many people in East London it's like, you're going to murder someone. Mm-hmm. You're going to, even at night.
How did nobody hear her screaming?
Well, they hear the screams or whatever, and then someone goes, "What was that?" Let's go see, and he's gone,
Yeah.
We
had an opportunity to do
we had an opportunity to do a Jack the Ripper murder, and we didn't do it.
But Dominic wanted to go back to the hotel room.
I don't remember that.
Yes. Oh, it's very cool.
Well, it would have brought back memories of 1888, wouldn't it? It's like, I'm not doing that anymore. I've given up murdering.
I think the tour was at I don't know, like 8 something. And
it was a night tour because it's like, oh yeah, you got to go. This is where
it's a night tour, but yeah, it gets dark. It's pitch black outside by 4:00 in the afternoon. Yes. So it's kind of like, all right, what are we gonna do? And everything's closed, so it's like, what are we gonna do now from 4:30 in the afternoon until 8 p.m.
We're gonna go murder some people. That's what we're going to do, because that's what we do when the sun goes down.
Yeah, so if anyone...
on my side of town.
Oh, my God.
Yes.
So if anybody listening has done that tour, let us know what we missed.
We'll do it. We'll go back and we'll do it. We'll do the Jack the Ripper tour. And I mean, I think there's several of them.
Yeah, probably.
But it's like it was a walking tour, and you had to, like, wait by there. Because was it around Whitechapel?
I can't remember where it started, but...
Because I seem to think it was more in, like, central West London. I was like, well, this is a bit weird, because it was never, like, proved he was up here.
It seems like it was somewhere near a bridge it started.
It must have been Whitechapel, because we went to Whitechapel, because we wanted to, like, it was in the daytime. But we went to Whitechapel, because I thought, oh, yeah, we need to take this opportunity to get out of the centre of London.
To trace our roots.
To trace our roots, get back to where we once belonged, And so we went to Whitechapel, and it was kind of cool. I thought it was kind of cool going there,
It wasn't particularly murdery.
It wasn't particularly murdery, but maybe in the night would change things.
Yeah.
Maybe it might be a bit murdery then. Maybe you'd be like, oh, yes. But yeah, however, the population of Whitechapel was largely transient, impoverished, and often used aliases, because they were criminal, or they've been thieving, or whatever,
Yeah.
Or murdering people.
East End.
East End.
East End.
Yeah.
Typical East End London.
And the lives of many of its residents were little recorded. Despite continued interest in the case and ongoing investigations by both professional and amateur researchers, the Ripper's true identity will almost certainly never be known.
They didn't say, yeah, I guess they wouldn't have saved anything from the murders. Like,
just newspaper reports, and
a couple 100 years from now, or 100 years from now or more, we'll be able to get the DNA off of this and figure out who this guy was. We'll compare it to somebody's Ancestry.com results, and we'll go, this is the guy.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. That's a shame. That's a shame they didn't just, like, save anything from the case for the future.
I mean, if you could go back in time, then yeah, you could probably figure out who it was, but that's only if you were, like, conducting an investigation. You got DNA all off the, you found the murder weapon, you got DNA off of that, and you got DNA off the victims, and you managed to match it with someone,
Because I guess they I don't know, would they have even known if he, like, raped them or anything beforehand?
Well, they were prostitutes, so they naturally assumed that he was...
probably had
engaging them and then killing them,
Yeah.
Anyway, our second notorious killer was someone who was caught.
All 8 of these if I don't stop talking.
John George Haig, and his crimes spanned between 1944 and 49.
Geez.
Yeah, I remember I showed you.
You forced me to watch a very disgusting, disturbing movie about this.
He was known as the Acid Bath Murderer, and he was convicted and hanged for the murder of 6 people, although he claimed he murdered 9. He battered them to death or shot his victims and disposed of their bodies using sulfuric acid before forging their signatures so he could sell their possessions and collect large sums of money. He was a fraudster beforehand who thought, oh, I'll just, because he was convicted of fraud beforehand, and then he decided, I guess when we watched A is for Acid, which starred Martin Clunes as Haig, they gave the reason for him going, oh yeah, they can't convict you if they don't have a body.
Yeah.
And so he was like, well, I can just melt the bodies down. I can, dissolve them.
Yeah.
In acid.
Yes.
A is for acid.
Yes. I think we get that.
Haig's last victim was Olive Durand Deacon, and she was the wealthy widow of solicitor John Durand and a fellow resident at the Onslow Court Hotel where he was living. Haig by then was calling himself an engineer, and Olive mentioned an idea to him that she had for artificial fingernails. That never took off, did it? He invited her down to the Leopold Road workshop, because he rented these like workshops and stuff where he could stick them in, and then dispose of the acid in the drain.
God.
In 1949, and once inside, he shot her in the back of the neck with the revolver that he had stolen from someone else, and stripped her of her valuables, including a Persian lamb coat, and put her into the acid bath. 2 days later, her friend Constance reported her missing. And then detectives soon discovered Haig's record of theft and fraud and searched the workshop and found his attaché case containing a dry cleaner's receipt for the coat and papers referring to from other people, because he'd killed like 6 people, and they were all kind of rich people he'd kind of gotten in with his like flim-flam ways. I'm an engineer, I've got money, but he had like.
And the motive was just to.
He was just
to steal from them, was it?
It was to steal from them because he had debts.
Yeah.
Because he was a fraudster. He was a confidence trickster anyway, but he'd gotten caught, and he was kind of regretting that someone can, identify him and
Yeah.
You're a fraudster,
Yeah.
So I'll just kill them,
Jeez, yeah.
And he rented a workshop in Sussex, and it didn't contain a floor drain, unlike the workshop he'd rented at Gloucester Road in London. He therefore disposed of the remains by pouring out the container on a rubble pile at the back of the property.
Ew, God.
Investigation of the area by pathologist Keith Simpson revealed 28 pounds of human body fat, part of a human foot, human gallstones, and part of a denture, which was later identified by Durand Deacon's dentist during the trial.
So he got a bit sloppy there.
He got sloppy there. He thought, I'll just pour it out, and no one will ever come here, It'll get washed away. But it was like part of a human foot, and gallstones aren't gonna,
Yeah.
And dentures and everything like that. Yeah, he kind of like captured the public's imagination. They his guilt was pretty much locked in. From the start, they were like, yeah, he did it.
Yeah. There was no question.
There was no question. He admitted and he confessed and he was hanged for it, which is...
Yeah.
I don't know what it was. I guess it was like that kind of thing during the war. People were just going nuts. Because the next one, John Christie...
Yeah. Oh, I don't recognize his name.
Reg Christie, they used to call him. Yeah. We watched 10 Rillington Place.
Oh,
okay. Was it Alec Guinness? I think Alec Guinness, maybe it wasn't Alec Guinness who played him in the movie.
Yeah.
He was known to his family as friends of Reg because he murdered at least 8 people. This is the next one now. Including his wife, Ethel, by strangling them in his flat at 10 Rillington Place.
Okay, yeah.
Notting Hill.
God, they've made a movie about all of these freaking maniacs.
Well, except Jack the Ripper. Oh yeah, they kind of did a Johnny Depp From Hell, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, there's been a lot of stuff with Jack the Ripper. There's Ripper Street. Isn't that about him, Shirley?
But that's more like a police procedural kind of show. I don't know if that's about Jack the Ripper himself.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know either. But it seems like, no, they've made plenty of stuff about him.
Yeah,
surely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Recently they did an adaptation. I think it was like a 3-part series we watched. But there's the famous movie, and I'm pretty sure it's Alec Guinness playing him.
Jack the Ripper?
No, not Jack the Ripper.
I thought we were talking about Jack the Ripper.
John Christie.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, about 10 Rillington Place it was called.
Yeah.
So yeah. He was... the bodies of 3 of Christie's victims were found in a wallpaper-covered kitchen alcove soon after Christie moved out of Rillington Place during March 1953. His timeline spanned 1943 to 1953.
That's a little more common, I think, with serial killers. Like, usually they don't get caught very easily, like, very quickly, rather. Usually he
had lodgers. Yeah, some people just do it, and because like when when we go.
I think that's part of being a serial killer, is that you have this kind of crazy mind that you're like really meticulous with everything you do, and that's why you pick victims that are sort of the same in some way.
Yeah.
You usually kill them in the same way. It's like very, very methodical.
Yeah.
So in
and also people
like,
weren't looking into people. If you killed someone in your house and buried the body, or you dissolved it or whatever, unless someone was really like paying attention, then
yeah,
it's not like someone murdered on the street and then ran away.
Yeah.
And if you were like well-to-do, like he was a landlord, and he had two of Christie's victims were Beryl Evans and her baby daughter Geraldine, who, along with Beryl's husband Timothy Evans, were tenants at 10 Rillington Place during the late 40s.
Yeah.
And this case sparked huge controversy after Evans was charged with both murders, and he was found guilty. And it was actually Reg.
Yeah.
John Christie,
So wait a minute. So what was his thing? All serial killers
and he was hanged
have,
for it too.
All serial killers have a thing. So Jack the Ripper's thing was prostitutes. The acid bath guy's thing was that they were all wealthy people that he was like ripping off.
Yeah, I think it was just a case of like he did one and then he was like, oh, that's it. That's the gateway drug.
It was just like addicted to the actual
doing it. Yeah.
That's even like, somehow it's even creepier. It's even worse. It's even really. Worse. Yeah.
Because I'm no psychologist.
Yeah.
But I think they've come out and said, yeah, like if it's in them to do this,
yeah,
then it's as easy as 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
But anyway, the controversy surrounding Reg Christie was Timothy Evans, who was living with him, got done for the 2 murders and hanged in 1950.
Yeah.
And then he was a major prosecution witness.
Yeah.
Reg Christie stood up and trial and said, yeah, it was definitely him.
Oh, jeez.
And then when his own crimes were discovered 3 years later, serious doubts were raised about the integrity of his conviction. I think he eventually received a pardon.
Oh, a lot of good that did. A lot of good
that did, yeah. But he himself, he subsequently admitted killing her.
Yeah.
But not Geraldine. But it's now generally said, because they do that sometimes. They go, yeah, I did it all, except that one. That wasn't me. I don't know who that was. And it's just like, who was it then? Yeah. Someone came in and said, haha, you take the rest, I'll take this one,
Yeah.
But yeah, so they quashed his conviction. And, but, it's a major mishandling by police because, it's like he went on to murder 4 more people then,
Jeez, yeah.
And he was eventually hanged too, John Christie.
They loved hanging people back then.
That was the death penalty for murder, yeah. Next one's a couple, Ian Brady and Myra Hindley.
Yeah.
And they were the Moors murderers.
Somehow you haven't shown me any film about this.
I don't know if they've made one. I'm sure they've made something.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they've made like a big enough production of it.
Yeah.
These happened in the 60s. And they were carried out by Ian Brady and Myra Hindley between 63 and October 65. And around Manchester, the victims were 5 children.
Ugh. Oh, what? They killed kids?
Yeah, no, they were seriously messed up people.
Yeah.
And, they were like into Nazism and all that kind of stuff, and they killed kids for fun. They lured them to them, and killed them for fun.
Oh my god. That's why they haven't made a film
and
about
they
it,
buried them and they buried them on Saddleworth Moor.
People can get on board with killing adults. Killing kids, it's just like, no, we don't want to know about this.
The aged between 10 and 17. The last one, Edward Evans, yeah. They were only charged for 3 like murders, both of them, and then there was people because there was still kind of like they wouldn't admit to the others, and there wasn't enough evidence.
Oh yeah.
and they received life sentences.
Why? I don't understand that when killers get found out, right? Like,
yeah.
And they're like, okay, yeah. And they never will tell. That's not true. Sometimes they exaggerate. Sometimes they go, oh, I've killed hundreds of people, you know, and they're just like, well, we've only found like 10 bodies. So
I've killed so many people, and you can't find them, and you'll never know where they are.
Yeah. I don't understand.
I mean, they start confessing then, and it's just like, oh, they can't stop.
Yeah.
And it was the same with like John Christie and these other ones.
But a lot of the time they'll do that. They'll only confess to basically what the evidence pins them to, you know, and then there'll be suspicions. Oh, well, what about these? And they're just like, no, you know, and they'll never say, even though you know they did it, but you just can't like. And it's like, you're already in trouble. Why not just tell us every last person that you've killed so that we can give some closure to these other families, you know?
Yeah.
And they just won't. They're just evil, messed up people. Yeah.
I mean, Myra Hindley was characterized in the press as the most evil woman in Britain.
Yeah.
And Ian Brady was diagnosed as a psychopath in 1985. He died in 2017. They're
killing kids. I think
she died in 2002. Yeah. And you know when they like,
God, how young were they then in this, like, doing this?
She was 60 in 2002, so she was about 20s.
They were really young.
They were young, and God. They were effed up.
And jeez, were they on drugs or anything? Just crazy.
I think they were just crazy. I mean, they, she said that he had this kind of like power over her, and she would have done anything for him. It was a little bit of like a Charles Manson situation.
Yeah.
And I think when he never wanted to be released once he was caught.
Yeah.
And he died in prison and everything, but he was like a psycho.
Yeah.
Obviously, but she was like someone who continually tried to get released, I think.
Yeah.
And people weren't having it because they were like, yeah, you were in on it too.
Yeah. Ugh.
You were just as guilty. Another couple who were just another murderous couple were Fred and Rose West.
Oh God, we're gonna leave everyone like completely depressed by the end of this.
Well, yes.
Happy Halloween.
And they were known to have committed at least 12 murders between 1967 and 1987. So they went crazy.
Yeah. I don't think
many of those connected to the kids believe there are several other victims whose bodies have never been found. And he was kind of like casual about it too. All the victims. I think the first victim he said was his first wife, who he killed or she killed. Yeah. Because they were burying them in their house in 25 Cromwell Street. They were burying them in the back garden, and they had like 9 kids or something.
Oh yeah.
And I think he killed his stepdaughter. He killed someone else. They went out and they brought people back and killed them, and they were like.
And none of the kids saw or anything.
The kids were all effed up by stuff because they were sexually abusing them and all that kind of stuff. They were just seriously screwed up people.
God.
And but investigators, when they caught Fred, and then they eventually arrested Rose too. She always proclaimed she was innocent, but the investigators was like, no, there was no way she had to have done it. Yeah. And he was like Fred was keeping her all out of it.
Oh yeah.
Until she was like having nothing to do with him and trying to like say it was all him, and I didn't know about any of this, until he said, actually, yeah, she was in on it. Yeah, she was in on it, and he eventually hung himself in prison in 95. Well, just after he was caught, and she remained in prison. And the weird thing is, her and Myra Hindley had some sort of like brief affair in prison.
Myra was from the first murderous
couple, yeah.
Oh, jeez. Of course they did.
And then that turned sour because they were trying to like compete against each other to be prison royalty and all. You couldn't make this stuff up, really. They did a documentary on it last year, I think, of the story between Myra Hindley and Rose West.
That sounds like something that would have appeared on Netflix.
Netflix, yeah, something like that, yeah. But yes, probably the most notorious one is Peter Sutcliffe.
Aside from Jack the Ripper.
From Jack the Ripper. Well, his moniker was the Yorkshire Ripper.
Oh, yeah.
And he was killing, like, women and girls for, like, 5 years.
So this was sort of a copycat thing.
It was sort of a copycat thing, but he claimed when he was caught he'd had the voice of God telling him to do it, which may be what Jack the Ripper was doing too, you know? It's like, oh, God is telling me to kill all these folk.
In the 70s?
1975 to 1980. And this...
I'm very impressed that, like, Britain catches their serial killers so quickly, because it seems like when we have
this one was seriously mishandled.
It seems like when we have a serial killer in America, it just goes on and on and on for decades before they're freaking caught, you know?
Yeah.
I can't think of when the last one was in the news or anything, but yeah, it seems like, yeah.
Well, yeah.
Impressive that
he was like a lorry driver.
Oh yeah,
and he killed in like all over the north, basically.
Lorry drivers, basically like an 18-wheeler, truck driver, yeah.
And he regularly used the services of prostitutes, and he was arrested for driving with false number plates.
Oh.
Because so much had happened. What the West Yorkshire police were going on is, oh yeah, there's been another murder, and it's probably the same guy. And then so many people were, like, hoaxing them as well.
Oh, God.
And there was a famous one, Wearside Jack.
Yeah.
Who recorded his voice going, "I am Jack, I see you have no luck in catching me." He was from, like, from up north.
Yeah.
And so they were believing this guy to be from Newcastle.
Yeah.
And when they finally caught Sutcliffe, he says, "Yeah, when that was going on, I felt safe." Because I'm not a Geordie. I'm from Shipley. I'm from Yorkshire.
Yeah.
So they were chasing that guy.
Oh God.
And it was basically a monumental humiliation. They eventually found the hoaxer too.
Good. I hope they.
20 years later, they eventually found the hoaxer. He was like this John Humble. He was this guy who was a big drinker or whatever. And when they matched his DNA because he'd been done for like a driving offence.
Yeah. And
they had some DNA on the envelope he'd sent the tape in.
Oh,
and
yeah.
They opened up the tape and it was like a 1 in a million shot of getting this guy.
Yeah.
And they were like, "This is him. We've got him in the database.
Oh my God.
So let's go get him,
Yeah, good.
And he says, "Oh yeah," he eventually said, "Oh, I tried to, I had remorse at the time and I called them and I said, oh, that Wearside Jack's a hoax, it's me."
Yeah.
But they didn't listen, and then a couple of more girls were killed by Sutcliffe in the meantime,
Oh my God.
But yeah, no, he was imprisoned and then he died, this guy. But yeah, it was probably one of the largest and most expensive manhunts in British history.
Yeah.
And it was just, he died in 2020. He got COVID-19, Sutcliffe.
Oh my God!
He was in jail. So
oh my God!
I mean, he was a paranoid schizophrenic, and his eye was, taken out by another prisoner or something.
Jeez.
Yeah, he was. I mean, crazy people. But yeah.
Yeah.
To hurry this along now.
Yeah, running out of time here.
Maybe last one, Dennis Nilsson. We watched him. There you go, another. Because they haven't done one about Sutcliffe yet, and
they love doing films on these guys on the BBC. Let's make a murdery film today.
Yeah. And David Tennant portrayed him because he looked exactly like him.
Oh, this is the
David Tennant one. Yeah. He was a guy. He was a Scots guy who lived in. He was called the Muswell Hill killer, the Muswell Hill murderer, because he lived in Muswell Hill and all his murders were taken. He murdered about 12 to 15 people. And he was like, various guys would be lured through deception, and then he was killing them by strangling them, and then maybe drowning them too. And then, following each murder, Nilsson would observe a ritual in which he bathed and dressed the victim's body, which he retained for extended periods of time before dissecting and disposing of the remains by burning them in a bonfire or flushing them down a toilet.
Gosh.
And his murders were discovered by a Dino Rod employee who was come to check the drains.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, the drains were, like, overflowing with, like, human remains, like fleshy things. God. And when he said it, he goes, oh, this looks kind of like human remains. And Nilsson goes, you know what that is, don't you? Someone's been flushing their Kentucky Fried Chicken down the toilet.
Yeah. Because,
you know, they were all, like, bones and hand or whatever. And so they're like, oh, we'll come back tomorrow. And he told his supervisor, and they eventually came back and the drains had been cleared, and they were like, yeah, this is suspect now.
Yeah.
Call the cops.
Yeah.
So they called the cops, and we saw it. They pretty much, they waited for him to come home.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as they opened the door, they smelled the rotting corpse of whatever, a couple of corpses, and they were, because, oh, that's how awful, you know?
Yeah.
And the inspector was like, oh, stop messing about, where's the rest of the body, you know, because we know it's you.
Yeah.
And then he just came clean. You know, he says, oh, I'll talk to you about it. I'll tell you all about it down at the police station.
And he did,
right? And he did, and he was just like, I'm glad you caught me. And it's like this relief.
Yeah.
They start doing something, and it's like, oh. And it's like people doing something bad, and they just want to be caught, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But they don't, obviously, you know. But yeah, Nilsson became known as the Muswell Hill murderer, and, you know, as he committed his later murders in the Muswell Hill district of London. He died at York Hospital in 2018 of a pulmonary embolism.
In York?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's where he was up at, like, in prison.
He was in prison? Huh.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of these people got life, and they meant life, you know, and it was just, like, no possibility of parole.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's like, yeah, you know.
We know you've done it.
We know you've done it. You've confessed. To let you out now, it's not worth your life, you know?
Well, it's like they're a danger to the public, aren't they? It's just
well, they're a danger to the public, yeah, because, I mean, Myra Hindley was, again, another one who was trying to get released all the time, and she was lying about being reformed and changed and all that kind of stuff. And she would have been killed when she got out anyway, so it's like, yeah.
Really quickly, it looks like you only have one more left, so...
Oh, yeah, Harold Shipman.
Oh, I recognize that name.
Yeah, he was probably the most prolific serial killer in British history.
You've said that about several now.
No, I mean, you know, the other one's terrible, but he was a doctor.
Yeah. Who
was killing his patients and getting them to leave them stuff in the will and stuff.
Oh my God.
And they were elderly too, and he was saying they died.
No, I don't want to hear about this. I cannot take that.
He was found guilty of the murder of 15 patients under his care.
Geez.
But his total number of victims was approximately 250.
Oh my God.
Because he started in like 1975.
How do they know that?
They just looked back at all his cares and you know, because he recorded all of them as a doctor. He was like the last one to see them alive, you know.
Yeah.
The doctor of death. His last victim was Kathleen Grundy, who was found dead at her home in 1998. And he was the last person to see her alive. He later signed a death certificate recording the cause of death as old age. Grundy's daughter, who was a lawyer, became concerned when another solicitor said that a will had been made, apparently by her mother, and this is you know, he doubted the authenticity of it, you know. The will excluded Woodruff and her children, which was the daughter, but left $386,000 to Shipman.
Oh,
and he said, get the police involved because something's weird's going on here.
It makes you terrified to get old, doesn't it? It's just like, geez, there's so many people so quick to take advantage of you and kill you, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, really, you know, because...
Makes you feel sick.
They exhumed her body and found traces of diamorphine, which is heroin, and often used for pain control in terminal cancer patients.
Yeah.
And he claimed that Grundy had been an addict and showed them comments he had written to that effect in his computerized medical journal. However, examination of the computer showed that they were written after her death.
Oh my God.
So, yeah, he was... And, you know, that shook up the British Medical Association right then. You know, of dispensing stuff and, you know... You know, the shipment effect.
Oh, God.
But, yeah, so he hung himself in prison, you know, and, you know, again, people were annoyed about it.
Yeah.
Because I remember, I think it was the Home Secretary
came out...
Yeah, because
you want someone to have their punishment. You know what I mean?
Yes, yeah. And they were just angry about it. The Home Secretary came out and says, "Oh, it's great. You wake up in the morning and you hear that Shipman's topped himself, and you think, oh, is it too early to open a bottle of champagne?" But then you discover everyone's upset about it.
Yeah.
Because, you know.
Yeah.
Because it's like, yeah... I mean, he's possibly... They did make a movie about him, too, but we never...
No, I can't. I don't want to see someone killing old people. Old people and kids, it's just like, no.
Just terrible. But yeah, there you go. Happy Halloween, everyone. It's just like...
I hope you're not listening to this before you go to bed. You can have nightmares.
I mean, we don't want to go into the murder... Because there's a lot of, like, murder... podcasts out there.
Oh, yeah.
Some great ones. So, you know, we're kind of treading on their toes with this.
True crime, yeah.
True crime.
Yeah, but anyway.
Hope
you found that interesting.
Yes.
I guess. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. We really appreciate your support. Be sure to check us out on social media. We are at TButty, TEABUTTY on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And we'll talk to you next time.
Talk to you next time.
Bye.